Most people feel, well, if I'm not diabetic, who cares about my glucose levels? It's not important to me. I'm not at that point. Poor glucose control contributes to weight gain, can contribute to our effects in our energy level. It can affect our performance. It can increase cravings. It can contribute to anxiety and depression and stress, affect wound healing. You can cause risks of insulin resistance. And when we don't have the ability to produce or use insulin we need, then we're at high risk for prediabetes, diabetes, and such. So when I use that terminology of glucose, it is pretty much the sugar that's in our bloodstream and that is used throughout our body for fuel and energy. What is our normal glucose range for anyone that is non-diabetic? Our typical range is anywhere from 60 to 100. Just so you can understand a little bit about metabolism and how glucose works and energy in our body. We eat food and it breaks down to protein, carbohydrate, and fat. Proteins, they can have effects on the way our glucose behaves in our blood. And those products, when I refer to them, comes from the animal products, nuts, beans, eggs, legumes, dairy, and seeds. Protein is broken down into amino acids. Those amino acids that are then used to produce muscle in our skin and our tissues, and also hormones. Carbohydrates are broken down to glucose. Glucose is our primary source of energy. Food groups that contribute to our carbohydrates are fruits, veggies, grains, dairies, and simple sugars. And when I talk about simple sugars, I'm talking about your cake, your sugar you add to your coffee, your cookies. Then we have fats. And fats are used for energy, but they're also used for, insulation, protection of our organs, hormones. But when I refer to fats, it's oils, butters, nuts, animal products, avocados, coconut. Fat itself does not contribute to our glucose. It can affect how glucose does affect our blood. It's broken down to glycerol, and it has fatty acids. So those are broken down and stored for those purposes and used that way. When it comes to fuel, we ideally don't want to use the protein amino acids. You have to break down the muscle to actually create amino acids for energy, and it is not an ideal way we want to create fuel. Carbohydrates, they break down easily, and we can either store the glucose as glycogen or we can use it right away. It's very easily broken down. Fats we can use, it just takes a lot of work to get there to break them down and use them for energy. And so that's usually something for long-term energy. Like if I'm gonna run a marathon or go for a long walk or I'm fighting an illness, you're gonna use those sources. This long process of the Krebs cycle or citric acid cycle is how we break down the fat to produce energy. In order for the first step to start, we have what's called citrate. The only way we can get to there is with this chemical in the blue box called oxalic acetate on the top. That chemical is made with sugar. So if I am going to break down fat, I need sugar. If my sugar control is very poor, I am not going to have the sugar I need to create that chemical, therefore to break down fat and go through this process. What happens is we cannot use fat for energy. We have no sugar for energy because we've really poor intake. It's very inconsistent. So then what we end up doing is we use our muscle to break down muscle for fuel. This is what we want to prevent, because in the long run, what this is going to cause is my body going, oh no, I am starving. If I continue to do this and continue to break down muscle, I will die. And therefore, I'm going to slow my metabolism so I'm not using the glucose as fast. So we really want to have a balance of these nutrients in the right amount. Insulin is a hormone we use to help take that sugar from our bloodstream into the muscles. Think of insulin as a key. So when that glucose or that sugar hits our bloodstream, my body goes, I have sugar there. And my brain is signaled to release insulin. And insulin then comes and opens all the doorways to let that sugar go from the bloodstream over into tissues that will use it. So therefore, once I eat something high in sugar, then I have an increase in insulin. As you can see, that the dark solid line is our glucose blood levels. So after we eat breakfast, of course, our sugar levels go up, and that's where you see that spike in the red. And then the blue follows as well because our body senses that sugar, and so then it will release that insulin. So the insulin follows along, and then we do our daily activities, and that spike decreases downwards. And then we have a snack and it goes up slightly, and then it goes down as we do our activities, and when that insulin's work, it does its job. And then we eat lunch and it spikes up, and then so forth all throughout the day with dinner, lunch, and dinner. So you can see there's large spikes at those meal times, which is expected. Those meals that were higher in sucrose, meaning simple sugar, there was a difference in the way our body responds. Those dotted lines show that the sugar went much higher in somebody that had cake instead of somebody that had a sandwich. And then what it causes us to do is we spike our insulin, the blue dotted line also, which causes our blood sugar then to drop much further than it would have if we had a balanced meal. When our body goes through this extreme high and extreme low, that's what can affect our mood changes, because our brain now doesn't have the right sugar balance. So we go from really high spike where we get a lot of anxiety or stress to a drop, and that's when you want to go take a big old nap because you just overdid it, like after Thanksgiving dinner. So it really affects our mood and our energy level when we're doing that all day long. So how do we really fix that is focusing on that balance. Meal balance is very significant into the sugar control, but 45 to 65% of our calories need to come from carbohydrate, 12 to 15% of calories come from protein, and then 20 to 35% come from calories from healthy fat, ideally from those unsaturated fats that are avocados, our nuts and seeds and those kinds of things. If we over restrict, we can cause our numbers to be too low, therefore losing the muscle mass. And so when people go on a extreme low carb diet, that's where we can see a lot of weight loss, but they've shown in research most of the time, it is actually related to muscle mass, not fat mass. So what does that look like? Going back to the My Plate, half of our plate is fruits and vegetables. Keeping in mind that fruit, yes, can yield some fructose, which is a type of sugar. So we want to make sure we try to eat it versus drink it so that fiber can benefit lowering those sugars. Now, grains, that fiber helps decrease the rate in which sugar is absorbed. So we don't have those huge spikes like you saw in someone that might just have the candy. Now, protein. What protein does is it slows that rate of which we absorb that glucose so we don't have a huge spike in that sugar. So remembering the dairy goes into that protein category as well. Now, dairy can have some sugar and contribute to that. However, when you have it, low fat and you have that protein in there, it's a balanced meal. Besides your meal balance, a concept that most people either really embrace or really struggle with, and this is meal timing. There has been some benefits shown to eating every 2 to 3 hours. Having breakfast, having a snack a couple hours later, lunch, a couple hours later having a snack, and then a couple hours later having dinner. Because you're eating every couple hours, you're never dropping significantly low to where you need to use your muscle mass for fuel. You stay in that ideal range of 60 to 100. It helps you with your metabolism. It helps you with your appetite. So this is where we want to be. What types of snacks? We have protein and carbohydrate together. Now, a lot of people will just do one, not the other. Keeping in mind when I talked about meal balance, that meal balance is really important to that protein decreasing that rate of which that sugar is absorbed, keeping us fuller longer. So when mealtime comes, we're not just going to eat everything that we see. We're hungry, but not just over the top hungry. And it also helps with our cravings as well. Breakfast definitely has been shown to be really important to our glucose control. Looking at those that had breakfast versus those that did not. The blue turquoise color is those that had breakfast, and the yellow is those that did not have breakfast. And those individuals that have breakfast in that blue turquoise line, you can see how much lower their sugars are throughout the day. What that yields is not only smaller portions, but it also will yield better mood, better energy, and less fat storage from that increase in spike. But I'm not hungry at breakfast. That's my biggest thing. Well, guess what? We can train ourselves to eat just like we can train ourselves to run a marathon. This research might change your mind a little bit. They broke it into groups of less than 10 hours of your day eating, eating anywhere from 10 to 13 hours or greater than 13 hours. And then within each of those groups, they monitored whether people ate before 8:30 or after for the start of that interval. Those that ate before 8:30 in the morning had the lowest insulin resistance. And they also noticed they had lower weight, best sugar control, and they were at lowest risk for developing diabetes. The major points that we have to take away for our glucose control are always having breakfast, don't skip meals, eat snacks in between meals, and then balance, balance, balance.